Hello and welcome to episode 117 of the How to Survive podcast. My name is Chris and joining me in his little porcelain boy form is Joe.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I've recovered now from our shock of having to be tied up to watch all the Saw movies.
Yeah.
Still available, HowToSurviveShow.com if you want to see us watching all the Saw movies whilst chained to a wall.
Yeah, that's a video that's available on our website, HowToSurviveShow.com. And of course, you've moved since then, Joe. You've been moving around mysteriously of your own accord. I can't quite work it out because, of course, as I said, you're a little China doll. Because this week's film is, of course, The Boy from 2016.
The Absolute Boy.
Yeah, the William Brent Bell film about a mysterious doll boy, China doll boy.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen The Boy, it's available on Amazon Prime Video to watch in the UK and, of course, in all DVD shops, etc. And here at How to Survive, before we talk about how we would survive, we like to recap the plot.
Yeah, this was a listener suggestion, of course, from Matt Peck. So thanks so much, Matt. Thanks so much for suggesting this one. It's been
What a treat.
Wow, yeah. Keep those ideas coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but then Matt did say in his recommendation, it's shit. So find out what we thought about it after this recap.
We've had a number of potential nannies come through already. Do you think you can manage?
Of course.
I'm Malcolm.
Hi.
I'm the grocery boy. Well, grocery man.
Lead the way.
Allow me to introduce Mr. Hilscher. And this is our son, Brahms. Music gives him so much joy.
Brahms is not like other children. It is very important that you follow these rules. Be good to him and he'll be good to you.
An American woman named Greta is hired as a nanny by the Hilscher family in a small English village. Upon her arrival, Greta meets Malcolm, the local shopkeeper, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Hilscher, and discovers that the child she will be nannying is in fact a porcelain doll named Brahms. Brahms Hilscher. The Hilschers leave Greta with detailed instructions for the care of Brahms and go on holiday. Through phone calls made to her sister, we discover Greta is fleeing her abusive husband. Initially, Greta ignores the rules left by the family. Malcolm informs Greta that the real Brahms died 20 years ago in a house fire and the two bond, planning to go on a date that evening. However, mysterious noises lure Greta into the attic, where she is locked up and eventually left unconscious.
She sees what looks like the figure of a man, but she's so startled she falls over and is unable to break her fall with the shock of it.
Just passes out.
Well, she bangs a concussion, mate. Knocks herself out all night.
Yeah.
Unconscious for 12 hours, then fine.
That's fine, yeah. The next morning she escapes the attic and further discusses what happened to Brahms with Malcolm. Strange things begin to happen around the house. A child sobbing can be heard, shoes go missing, phone calls are cut off, and the doll Brahms seems to move of its own accord. Meanwhile, the holidaying Hilschers are having such a terrible time, they write a goodbye letter to Brahms and drown themselves in a lake.
Yeah. That's weird.
Yeah. Greta, do you recognise the dad, by the way, Mr. Hilscher?
I did recognise him. Who is he?
He's Bishop Brennan from Father Ted.
Is he? Amazing.
Greta starts to believe Brahms' spirit resides within the doll and begins to follow the rules meticulously. She shows Malcolm Brahms' ability to move around the house independently, and he is amazed, suggesting that they show this miracle to the world, but then never does anything to advance this suggestion further. Instead, he tells Greta a hitherto untold story about the real Brahms, who took a school friend out to the woods and crushed her skull. Before the police could question Brahms, the Hilscher estate burned to the ground with Brahms inside. In light of this memory, Malcolm performs a perfect volte-face and suggests Greta leave the house and never come back, but Greta reveals that she suffered a miscarriage as a result of her abusive husband and thus feels a burden of responsibility to Brahms,
the doll,
who let's not forget, is a porcelain doll. One night, Greta's ex-husband Cole appears and threatens Greta. Malcolm arrives and the three have a tense standoff. Cole stays the night, but awakens to find "Get Out" written above him in blood on the wall. Believing it is the work of Greta or Malcolm, he smashes the Brahms doll in a fit of rage. Suddenly, the lights begin flickering for some reason, and strange noises occur. Cole investigates a mirror, and suddenly it smashes for some reason, revealing a hidden passageway out of which emerges the adult Brahms wearing a porcelain mask for some reason. Real Brahms attacks the group, killing Cole, wounding Malcolm, and chasing Greta into his secret attic hideaway. There she finds the letter from the Hilshers and realizes they aren't going to return and that they have left Greta there for Brahms. Brahms threatens to kill Malcolm unless Greta stays, so she does, arming herself with a screwdriver. Putting Brahms to bed, she stabs him in the guts with a screwdriver, but Brahms, who is superhumanly strong for some reason, despite living inside the walls and in the attic for 20 years with presumably very little nutrition, throws her across the room and pins her against the wall. Greta manages to sort of fiddle about a bit with the screwdriver in his gut, and Brahms slumps to the ground in perhaps the most underwhelming villain death of all time.
Yeah.
But wait, he's not dead. Greta and Malcolm leave safely, and we see Brahms putting his doll back together for some reason.
Yeah, and it closes on a close-up of the doll, as if to say, oh, he's still out there.
Yeah.
But the doll isn't the threat.
No.
It never was.
No, and what's to stop Greta and Malcolm going straight to either the hospital or the police and going, remember that story about the Hilshers, right?
Yeah.
That kid's still alive, isn't he, in the walls? So probably see to that.
Maybe we'll come to that when we talk about how we'd survive in the movie.
Right.
But I think before we get there, we've got a lot of
information to pass from there.
We've got to unpick this a bit.
Okay.
Now, what did you think of it?
It's pretty bad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty rubbish. And it's like we've watched some films about which we felt sort of like offended, and we've watched films where like they're so unpleasant there's no enjoyment to be had.
Yeah.
This isn't one of those films. This is just like a film that can't escape the silliness of its own premise.
Exactly, yeah.
It's sucked into the vortex of how ridiculous its own storyline is.
That's
basically.
true, yeah. But it's not an unoriginal idea, right?
No,
to
of course
have
not.
He was in the attic all along. He's like a pretty cliched gag, right? And there's elements of old literature in it.
Yeah.
Like such as at the end I thought he was actually going to turn out to be a good guy, and he was going to be like a To Kill a Mockingbird sort of thing, right? And so spoilers for To Kill a Mockingbird, which was written in the 60s, but Jem gets injured outside of Boo Radley's house, and Boo Radley comes to the rescue and kills the villain. And he turns out they were worried about Boo Radley all the time, but actually he turns out to be a good guy.
Sure.
I thought they were going to go for that angle.
What, and Malcolm would be the baddie or something?
Not even that. I thought he'd kill Cole and save Greta and Malcolm, and then
Well, you're half right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he turned out to be a lunatic as well. So it's like, yeah. Or the other thing it alludes to, and actually, she has to read him books in the movie. One book she reads him, she reads a passage about Mrs. Reed.
Yeah.
Mrs. Reed is a character in Jane Eyre.
Right. And in Jane Eyre, obviously, the wife is in the attic.
Yes, exactly. I read Jane Eyre about 2 weeks ago, mate. So it was very timely.
Good.
Yeah. A lot of acid
extra
ghosts. Yeah.
A lot of extra enjoyment for you.
Yeah. But as soon as that happened, I was like, well, now I know what's happening.
Right.
Because it's such a heavy-handed reference if you get it. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't get it and you read it on IMDb, like, oh, it's Jane Eyre, of course, is about someone in the attic.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I fucking knew that. So.
Like, the problem that I had with the film is that I think I just found it unintentionally really, really funny.
Yeah.
Almost every time it cut to like a reaction shot of the Brahms doll, I was like laughing out loud at the film, which is not.
It's not what they intended.
It is not something that they would have hoped for.
No.
I don't think when they were making the film, especially when Greta tries to make the doll jump.
Yeah.
Like she's starting to suspect that something's up.
Yeah.
So she like turns away from the doll, then goes, boo! And like really pantomime way. But it's like, it's shot like a comedy.
Yeah.
Like, because obviously it's really funny in comedy things when something like that is happening and you get like a really deadpan, flat reaction from something or someone.
Yeah.
Like a time-honored comedic editing technique, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like someone will say something and they'll be like talking to a dog or whatever, or their pet, and they'll go like, "Oh, but you know, you would never leave me, would you? Like you love me," or something like that. And then it would cut to the dog who's just like blankly looking at them.
It's similar to in, say, The Office, when Tim looks at the camera when Brent's doing something stupid.
Right,
Anyway,
exactly, yeah. And it might as well be that, like every time it cuts to Brahms, because it's a small porcelain doll boy.
Yeah.
And to me, the creepy thing is like when the parents are still there and they're like doting on him.
Yeah.
Like that's all like weird and creepy in that sort of, like you say, Victorian Gothic era literature way. But when it's just like the implied threat is, you know, what if this small doll of a boy is alive? It's just like weird and rubbish for me.
Yeah, there's episodes of The Twilight Zone which dealt with living dolls and you know, twists like that, but it doesn't have the, because it's so hysterical.
Yeah,
and it's, like you said, edited in a way which feels like a comedy, but I think it's more trying to be like, it's trying to be creepy, but because it's so unscary, it's just like, fucking shut up.
yeah.
It just ruins the twist at the end because it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. I think it leans too heavily into maybe the doll is responsible. Like it would be scarier if it was like, you know, you have to look after this place and you're just like house sitting rather than you're babysitting a doll. It's like you're house sitting and it's like this sad old couple and they bought a doll that to some extent looks like their child who died, right? That's sad. And then like you'd have all the haunting stuff and like the noises and the things going missing and all that sort of shit. But like without the constant reaction shots of Brahms, like, oh, maybe the doll did it.
Yeah.
Like, because all that does is funnel you down every explanation other than the fact that the doll is responsible. Whereas if like the doll was just in the background and like it wasn't made a big deal of it, but it was like moving and like maybe some people spotted it and some people didn't.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe don't call the film The Boy.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it was originally going to be called In a Dark Place.
right.
So she's in a dark place in her life. The
Yeah.
couple are in a dark place. And obviously Brahms is literally in a dark place because he lives in the attic.
Yeah. Well, should we talk about the twist basically? Because I think obviously that's the talking point from
And
the film.
I mean,
isn't it?
you hadn't seen it before we did this, right?
No.
But you knew the ending.
Yeah, because I think it's
Famous for being
it's
so silly.
right. Yeah, it's somehow bled into pop culture because of how stupid a twist it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the reveal that the boy has grown up and lived in the walls of the house for 20 years.
And like you said, it's grown up to be like 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
Like
Superhumanly
bodybuilder.
strong.
Yeah.
And wears a mask.
That's presumably to cover the
Burns,
horrific
right?
burns. But then he can't be too concerned about that.
Exactly.
No one sees him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a ridiculous premise, isn't it? Because like I know the movie's trying to be like, because
I'll tell you what would be scarier is if he was like, because also the thing is that he's just wearing a porcelain mask, but otherwise he's wearing just like dirty like cardigans and stuff.
Exactly.
So like it would be much scarier if he was like something in his psyche shattered when he was a child. And like rather than being like bearded under the mask and everything, he was trying to make himself look as much like a child as possible.
Yeah.
And so like he was still dressing in like the suit that's like 10 sizes too small for him and like shaving and like got his hair all coiffed in that way and everything.
Yeah.
Like that would be much creepier than just like he's a hermit who wears a porcelain boy mask.
Yeah. Where'd you get that?
Mate, none of it makes any sense.
No. Have you, it's a classic bit of, in Friday the 13th Part 2, there's a scene at the beginning where Jason attacks a girl in her home, which is like hundreds of miles from Crystal Lake.
Right.
And you're just like, if you take 2 steps back, you're thinking, how did he get there?
Yeah.
And why, like what journey did he take to find her? Did he look in a phone book? Did he ask like the local police where she is? Like all this stuff. And the same logical difficulties come from this movie in as much as, when did they, obviously he survived the fire. When did they put him in the wall and brick him up? And then when did they just let him out?
And also like presumably his parents know. Like, do they know? Is that your interpretation? Do they know that he's alive?
Yeah, they're feeding him.
Right.
Oh, you think they don't know he's there?
Well, it's difficult to... Because...
Why did they write to him?
So the two interpretations are either that they know that he is alive and they, like, bring women to the house as, like, an offering.
Right.
Right. But, like, can't bring themselves to do it anymore, so they kill themselves. Right. That's option A. Option B is that he's been doing the whole, like, doll thing for, like, 20 years and has convinced them that, like, the doll, he lives within the doll. His spirit resides in the doll.
Right. Okay.
And, like, they just can't go on because they're, like full of grief about everything.
Yeah.
And they're writing to him because that's a vehicle for their grief.
So my interpretation was... Is that your interpretation?
I don't know. I mean, I think the film doesn't... I guess the more sensible one is that they know.
They're in on it.
Yeah.
And
But
I
then
think he says... The dad says a line which is, oh, we kill the rats because she's worried they'll get in the walls. And of course, Brahms doesn't like animals. Right? And it makes sense in retrospect because you're like, oh, he doesn't like animals and he's in the walls.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you think he just means, oh no, Brahms doesn't like animals. And he's like, because he's a nutter, he's just like mentioning that fact.
But like, so is the reason that they've kept him hidden because he murdered his school friend?
I assume so, yeah.
Right.
But then why they kill themselves is
presumably
any sense.
Well, presumably it's they don't want to keep on like bringing women to the house to be murdered. Presumably Greta's not the first instance of this. And but equally they love their son enough that they can't turn him in.
How did he say, I need a girl to murder? Like, how did that arrangement come about?
I don't know.
That's what I mean.
Well, like, let's add it to the list of questions.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, why is he super strong? Why is he wearing a mask?
Yes, because he's a horror movie villain.
But he's a rubbish villain, isn't he?
Yeah.
And like, I think also that the whole scene where the reveal happens.
Yeah.
Like, I know some people I know some people listen to the podcast without having seen the films.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth going on YouTube and just like typing in the boy twist scene or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so like weirdly and awkwardly staged.
Yeah.
And I think you see like too much of him too quickly. Like you see none of him for the whole film.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're seeing him like in
full body.
Yeah. And you're just like, oh, right. Real Brahms.
Yeah.
That's the twist. And like the whole scene is just like clumsy and like weird. And it's just loads of shots of all the characters like looking around at one another.
Yeah.
And like he speaks in a kid's voice sometimes.
But then sometimes not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
it's not like
and he crawls out from behind the mirror in like in a sort of demented way, but then other times he's like moving completely freely. Like he's a rubbish villain in the sense that
it's
like,
very inconsistent.
He's a rubbish villain in the sense that he like, you know, isn't scary and is like the least interesting solution to the twist.
Yeah.
And also he's rubbish because of like they're like doing all these things really half-heartedly, like having him like move in a contorted way. You could have him move in a way that would suggest that he's lived in a wall for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And be really like, I don't know,
worried
contorted or
spaces,
something. Yeah, like contorted and weird and all that sort of thing. You could have him speak in a child's voice like all the time. And like I said, you could have him like dressed as a child or whatever. But they just do all these things like half-heartedly, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a bit rubbish.
A good test for horror movie villains is to, like, say, two major questions. One is what's their motivation? What's their motive? And one's what's their personality. So if you take Freddy Krueger, what's his motive?
Getting revenge on the parents who burned him alive.
What's his personality?
Sort of preternaturally evil, like sinister, takes joy in doing it all.
Sadistic.
Yeah.
Jason Voorhees, what's his motive?
Getting revenge on camp counselors for the murder of his mum.
Yeah. And what's his personality?
His personality is the absence of a personality.
Right,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
He's a like brute force, unstoppable killing machine.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Brahms, what's his motive?
Like, sort of, I don't know. Like, he likes killing girls and women.
And what's his personality?
At different turns, childish and like subservient, and then other times like a creepy adult Like, you know, he does that whole like Mrs. Voorhees thing of being hypnotized when Greta starts talking to him like like his mother.
Yeah.
And
puts
like
on the jumper and everything.
yeah, like orders him into bed, and then he's like, "Oh, give me a kiss." And then when she kisses him, he like starts like trying to, it's almost like make out with her, I suppose.
Yeah.
But like that's inconsistent with how a child would act.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Like so, it's the whole way through. It's inconsistent, and like it would make sense if he was like knowingly behaving like a child, you know, an adult in Arrested Development.
Yeah.
But I don't. That's not the impression you get. It's like he's got like 2 or 3 different sort of varying personalities.
Like when you watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a scene where Leatherface is wearing an apron and he's serving everyone dinner, and you think this is fucking crazy because Leatherface is a 7-foot tall behemoth who murders everyone, and he's the scariness is that he is pretending that he's the mother,
right?
And in this one, it's like you've got a 7-foot tall behemoth who loves killing people,
wearing a cardigan,
and like with a beard. And if he was, like you said before, if he was really trying to pretend he was a child, it would be fucking bizarro and scary. But he's the only thing he's doing that pretends to be a child is talking in a child's voice sometimes, and wearing a mask to cover his burns.
Yeah, and like acting in a subservient manner to people who talk down to him.
Yep.
Yeah. It's an odd one. I said earlier that I think they picked like the least interesting of all the possible like endings that you could have had. So like it would be more interesting if, for example, you know, it's a Conjuring-esque haunting of some kind and the doll is like a manifestation of Brahms' spirit.
Right.
Like, I mean, we've seen it 100 times before, but it's more interesting than Man in the Walls.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you could have Greta has gone mad and she's like projected the spirit of her unborn child onto Brahms.
I think they must be hinting at that at some point.
Yeah.
It's never really...
It's not like well drawn enough.
No, exactly. You're never thinking that's a possibility. Really.
No, exactly. Yeah. But there's
enough groundwork for that to be the case, but they don't capitalize.
Like you could have had that Malcolm like killed Brahms and kills the people who come to the house and like passes it off as like a haunted, spooky, you know.
Right, so he's in the house the whole time.
Right, yeah, and he's responsible for all of it historically.
Yeah.
Like you could have had any of those sorts of things and it would be more interesting than the boy has lived in the walls for 20 years and is now like a creepy man-child.
Or the boy's lived in the walls. Why does he wear the mask? I can't get over it.
It's one of a number of questions. If you know Matt Peck, scholar of this film, then please email in howtosurviveshow@gmail.com. And so like overall, I think basically my problem with this film is that unlike a lot of the films that we watch, it's very well shot, like nicely staged, lit, like it's a very rich looking production. The acting is good. Like, you know, Laura Cohen, who's obviously famous from Walking Dead, and all of the cast, Bishop Brennan included.
Bishop Brennan's the highlight.
Yeah, like they're all doing a fine job, but it's all in service of a film that is founded on a terrible idea, basically.
It's insultingly bad.
Yeah.
Do you think it's... We talk about my first horror movie a lot, as a genre. So you get things like, you know...
So just explain what my first horror movie is.
My first horror movie would be something like The Shallows or Don't Breathe or Lights Out,
right?
Which you see on the side of buses and they have like a nice viral video trailer.
But so basically like a blockbuster horror movie that's big on jump scares, light on narrative development or characters, and typically has like quite a big budget behind it because they know they're just going to get teenagers in at Halloween to watch it.
Popcorn movies,
right?
It differs from say like a really scary horror movie which would terrify you and like chill you in a way that like confronts your beliefs or makes you think about mental health in a different way or things like that, right?
Yeah.
Where the thing that scares you is the real terror of the situation. Whereas in this, the doll looks a bit creepy and occasionally a movie makes you jump. Yeah. And that's my first horror movie. Yeah. It's something you go to when you're 14 on a date.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, that was fucking scary.
Yeah. The bit where they went, whoa.
Yeah.
That's scary. Yeah. Well, it's that time of the show, Joe, that we come to every week. It's time to talk about how we would survive if we found ourselves in the Heelshire estate. How would you survive the boy? That boy.
That boy. I would say, well, first of all, where do you think the Hillshire estate is, right, in the country?
Probably like Shropshire or somewhere like that.
Quite well spaced. I thought home counties, they've got very Queen's English accents, and even the local shopkeeper.
I mean, it's just generic because it's obviously an American finance film. It's just generic, like English village, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that case, if you were a local business, you want to be really focused on staying local, don't you? So why is the London black cab driver continually going to that house to pick people up?
Right.
Is he just in the area, just hoping for the best?
Are you just like provincial? So you're comparing to like what would actually be what you'd find in provincial English town taxi cabs, which anyone who doesn't live in England is just normal cars. Like not every taxi in England
is a black
cab. Is a stereotype black cab that you would see in London.
Yeah. In fact, if you see one outside London, you think, what's going on?
Yeah, that poor, like, they're dreadfully lost.
Yeah, he's gone a long way for that. It's either a really good business and they've gone, like, they've rung him up from
you
central London.
buy them privately. You can buy those cars.
Yeah, of course.
So maybe he is a taxi driver who's like bought one for the novelty factor.
Maybe.
You know, like we grew up near a river where there was a ferry which was painted pink.
Right.
And like that was the sort of kooky USP of that
particular ferry.
River ferry. It's like, you know, but everyone refers to it as the pink ferry.
Yeah.
So like maybe everyone would refer to him as like
the black cab.
Black cab, yeah. Maybe there's like 4 or 5 rural taxi firms in the area, but everyone just like the first name on their lips is you get black cab.
Call black cab.
Yeah, call Keith from Black Cabs.
Yeah, maybe. So you think it's a good thing?
Well, I don't know.
Well, I'm saying 99% of black cabs are going to be in London.
Right.
Probably more than that, 99.9%.
Okay.
I'm just saying he's strayed a long way hoping for a good fare.
I mean, he might be doing airport runs.
In a black cab in Shropshire?
Well, like wherever he is. I thought you said home counties. He could have picked her up at the airport and taken her to the house. And then I think the only other time you see him is when
they leave, which is a day later. So
take the Hillshires back to the...
so he was just sleeping in the car, was he?
Well, I don't know. He might have done a few other fares. We don't... I mean...
Overnight. All I'm saying is... It's
So you're saying it's bad business sense to drive from London if you're a black cabbie to Shropshire or wherever.
Yeah. Only that's a good
for a
fare.
Single fare.
Don't stick around though, because you won't be getting any back.
But you might have, like, typically if you get a taxi to somewhere inconvenient, they'll pay for they'll make you pay for the return journey for them as well. So like maybe, you know, maybe what happened was that he used to run the local rural taxi company, and then he moved to, you know, nearer to London, got a black cab. But the Hillshires, they seem very set in their ways, very, you know, like, you know, keep their friends close and everything.
Right.
And maybe they keep, you know, phoning Keith up, and he's like, oh well, you know, I wouldn't normally, but obviously you've been through a lot, Mr. and Mrs. Hillshire. So of course I'll pick you up for your holiday.
But he's not a good black. He just spent the whole ride to the house looking at the woman's boobs in the review.
Did he?
Yeah.
Right.
Big deal made that, and she has to like button up her blouse because he's like staring at her.
Right.
So why would you keep going to him? He's just a pervert.
Maybe the Hillshires haven't noticed that side of his personality. I mean, that sort of stuff's just like such generic, like weak horror bullshit, isn't it? It's just like, oh, there's a creepy man. Like, oh, like, you know, everyone in the town is slightly weird. Like,
yeah. Well, he's not from the town.
Well, who knows? So what is your survival technique that you're building up to?
If you want to make a living,
right,
and you need to make a living to survive in this world, don't be a black cab driver in like Shropshire.
But like, he's clearly busy though.
2 fares in 2 days
from the same house though.
Yeah, that's true.
And like presumably to the airport.
Yeah. All right.
I think he's
He's doing well.
I think he's doing well.
He's got a cottage industry.
Yeah, because he's got his USP, he's got his pink ferry.
Yeah.
And he seems to be...
Pink ferry's getting an absolute...
free advertising.
Yeah. He's just making way across a small body of water for a reasonable price.
Yeah.
Go on then. How would you survive?
So this is from Mrs. Hilscher.
Okay.
Don't mother Brahms quite so much.
Right, okay.
Because obviously, personality is to some extent nature and to some extent nurture.
Yeah.
I think when you finally become an adult, and if you're too doting on a child when they're growing up, quite often that can have an adverse effect on their personality, and they can spend 2 decades living in the walls.
Yeah, often.
Like if you're doting on him to the extent that he's spent 20 years living in the walls, apparently with your knowledge, then I think you've done something wrong. The father says that, or it's reported, I suppose, that Mr. Hilscher says at one point that Brahms was odd.
Yeah.
That doesn't quite cover it though, does it?
No, he's a murderer.
Yeah, he's a murderer who's lived in the walls of the house for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is odd.
What you're doing by mothering, or I suppose fathering the kid for 20 years to that extent, is you're not letting him learn about consequences to his actions. He's already coming from a privileged upbringing.
You won't know the value of $1.
Right.
And now you won't know the value of a
human life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's faced no punishment for his murder. It's bad parenting to allow your child to live with. It's bad parenting even on a just sort of like fundamental, like don't let your kids run around inside the walls of your stately home.
Yeah.
Like,
I think what you've done there is notice the premise of the film.
Yeah. But would you disagree that?
No, you're quite right.
Like, because if they'd gone, look, Brahms, we've realised that you're in the walls.
Yeah.
Come here. We need to take you to the police because you need to face up to what you've done.
Yeah.
He'd have gone to juvenile detention, maybe even prison as an adult, and then he would have learned about, like it'd be very difficult for him to maintain the same personality traits in prison,
right?
Without ending up in a psychiatric
ward.
I
think he'd be straight to the psych ward, wouldn't he?
You would imagine so.
Yeah.
But in which case he'd get the treatment that he clearly so desperately needs.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't end up with Mr. and Mrs. Hilscher like committing suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're correct. So do you think if she'd been less mothering to him?
I mean, it's basically
he's a lunatic as well.
Yeah.
I think, and the implication is that it's not because he was given too many sweets or anything when he was a kid, or to stay up late.
Right.
It's because he was born bad. He was a bad seed.
Really? You think so?
I think so. And they didn't know how to cope with it because I guess they were expecting...
They're like ill-equipped or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they're 98 years old with a 20-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still think the blame to some extent lies with them if they've known that he's been living in the walls for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, they were harbouring a criminal, weren't they?
Yeah.
Fair point.
A dangerous one.
Yeah, very.
So basically, yeah, like turn your kid in, stop being such a doting mother, or overbearingly doting mother, and everyone would benefit, and you won't have to kill yourself.
Yes, yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Here's my next idea, which is it's more of an analysis of a situation that happens and a suggestion of what could be done better.
Okay.
So Cole shows up, doesn't he? And he says...
Seems like a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he comes with all sorts of problems and is obviously a creepy abuser.
Yeah.
And Malcolm takes Greta to one side and says, look, is everything okay here? And she says, don't worry, I've got a plan. You go home.
Right.
Right? What was the plan?
The plan was to ask the porcelain doll boy for help, or the ghost of the porcelain doll boy for help.
Right.
Yeah, that was it.
Did she ask the doll for help?
Yeah. She gets into bed with him and like says, Brahms, I need you, or something like that. And then he wakes up with Get Out written above his head in blood.
Whose blood?
Don't know, mate.
Just blood. Just blood.
Okay. It's just creepy horror movie stuff 101, isn't it?
Yeah. The thing is, if she'd said to Malcolm, yeah, you're right, I'm not safe with this guy here.
Yeah.
Can you go and get the local constable,
Yeah.
bring him round,
Yeah.
we'll arrest him because there's a restraining order out on him. He's an abuser. He's already threatened me several times tonight. I don't feel safe. Rather than go, I know, I better ask this doll, a ghost doll, for help.
Yeah, sure. You would hope that if the victim of domestic abuse took out a restraining order against someone and then flew to a country, like a very specific location in the world, and then like a few weeks later, the abuser flew to that same location, you'd hope that that would like flag something up in the system, and go,
something's
not
right.
We should do something about this.
Yeah, I think the police wouldn't be like, if you told them a story and said she's flown across the Atlantic Ocean, and sought refuge in this place.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also he's trespassing. She has permission to be there, and he doesn't.
Yeah, and he's refusing to leave.
Yeah.
There's no way any officer would.
What Malcolm does is sit outside in his car,
asleep
until he hears a kerfuffle.
Oh man! And then, oh god, it's so bad. Like, the one thing that bothered me about that scene wasn't like the weirdness of the situation. It was like, how is he managing to hear through brick and glass?
Yeah. It's old houses, isn't it? Maybe they're single pane.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. My next sort of bit of advice is for the boy Brahms, or the man Brahms. If people think you've been dead for 20 years, no one's looking for you. Just don't. Why still live within the walls?
Yeah.
There's no reason to. Like, no one's going to recognize you because you've like clearly aged 20 years.
Well, I think his face is very badly scarred from the fire. That's why he wears.
Well, no one's going to recognize. Well, just move. Like, go like the next town along, or move.
You could sell up the house. And probably afford to build a research hospital in like Delhi.
I mean, the problem is that he's just obviously like a psychopath, but like not in the well-written sense. It's just like he's
not like
generic.
Not like Heath Ledger's Joker, which is like a good portrayal of a psychopath, an agent of chaos.
Right. Yeah. He's just like generic, mentally ill horror movie villain, isn't he? Yeah.
But an insulting portrayal of mental illness as well.
Of course. Yeah. Like the all the sensitivity that you'd expect from the boy. But he's got no reason to just continue living in the walls in the attic.
No.
What is he getting out of the relationship with Greta?
Add that to the list of questions. But I guess is he? This is what I was thinking when watching it. Does he want a mother or does he want a girlfriend?
Well, the implication throughout is that he wants a mother until he tries to kiss Greta, which I think is just like a weird horror movie. Oh, wouldn't it be creepy if someone did this?
I thought they'd pull the mask back and she'd have to kiss the wounds, which would have been like at least memorable.
Right.
Whereas with this, it's just like, oh no, you're giving him Jason Voorhees superhuman strength. And I'm like, well, I know how physics works.
Yeah.
I was with it to that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on that note, that leads nicely into my last point, which is sort of like the flip side of that thing, which is just everyone should live within the walls.
Yeah.
Because it's like he's obviously grown up to be incredibly strong, despite his obvious injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, it only seems to be his face that was burned, like out of the whole of his body.
Yeah.
But
not even all of his face.
No.
Everything above his mouth.
But like clearly living in the walls gives you the ability to move around silently whenever you want. But it also makes you really like super strong.
Yeah. Tall.
Yeah. And like maybe it's the fitness regime for modern times. Because, you think climbing around in the walls of a house.
Yeah.
You're probably looking at a good core workout, lots of climbing.
Yeah.
A lot of people like bouldering these days. And all that sort of thing.
Very popular.
Next level up. You're going to be lifting things. And presumably he doesn't pay rent or living costs, as people don't know that he's alive.
Yeah.
So, it's perfect for our generation because, living costs are a huge problem for us.
So would you say just move into the cavity wall?
Well, and also overpopulation is, and scarcity of housing.
Taking up too much space. Really. Yeah.
So, like, if people would just live in the walls of buildings as well as in the rooms, then maybe that would help us solve the overpopulation crisis.
It does help that he lives in a stately home. Therefore, the cavity walls amount to a large studio apartment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But like clearly it's worked out for him.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe everyone else should try it.
I mean,
like,
he's left alone.
Yeah,
I mean, it
and
doesn't
he's
work
able
out from
to.
that well. Like, everyone's dead.
Yeah, but he's able to overpower Greta, Malcolm, and Cole, all of whom seem to be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, he survives, but
At
he's
what cost?
Yeah, but he's not exactly having a
He's got
good
no quality of life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But he's not being forced to stay there. Like, he's staying there of his own volition. So that's a moot point anyway, because clearly it's the life that he wants.
We wouldn't want to leave, would he?
No.
Yeah, fair point.
What about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, final idea. We hinted at it earlier, and it's just call the police.
Right.
As soon as you think someone's in the house,
Yeah.
before the creepy doll stuff happens, call the police.
It's classic, like, horror movie existing in a world where just police aren't a thing.
Yeah, just, like, sometimes in like we did Creep a few weeks ago, and he calls the police in that film, and they're unhelpful.
Yeah.
Which at least acknowledges you should call the police.
Right.
This doesn't even
No.
don't even try.
No.
She calls her sister for magazines.
Yeah.
Doesn't call the police.
No.
Bizarre.
Strange film. Yeah, I can't disagree with that. calling the authorities would be helpful. Calling the special constable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really the boy.
That's all there is to say about The Boy. And of course, Matt Peck, our listener, was the one who recommended The Boy.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt.
As a sort of very couched recommendation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he's emailed in to say how he would survive The Boy. He's got a list of suggestions.
Okay, go on.
Number 1, as soon as you find out that you're being asked to babysit a doll instead of a real human, say no thank you.
Yeah, that's not unfair. There is a certain element of like social pressure because
it's awkward, isn't it, and
Yeah.
uncomfortable. She is fleeing an abusive husband as well,
Yeah.
and she's like flown across the world to.
I think she says at one point like, "This is an easy gig.
Yeah,
I'm getting paid to sit around and."
Have they run out of like women of babysitting age in England, such as Brahms' like capabilities as a killer?
Yeah, well, no other women are shown in the film of any age
other than Mrs. Hilscher.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, so basically, if something seems wrong, it probably is, I guess. It's boiled down as a fair comment. Number 2, make sure you follow the parents' rules, which she does for some time in the film, and everything goes well.
Classic bit of horror movie troping there. They say, "Don't break the rules," and then the person breaks the rules immediately. If you were to say it was a harbinger at the beginning of the film, who was like, "Never light a candle before midnight,"
right?
And then they do that.
Never feed them. Never feed the gremlins. Or whatever.
Yeah.
There is definitely an element of that. Number 3, if the doll starts leaving footprints or moving when you're not looking, leave the house. It's a fucking doll.
Yeah.
I think his point there is that what is a doll going to do to you?
Right. Yeah. It's your Chucky criticism is you just kick it.
Yeah. Just like that's my criticism of Child's Play, is that I'm confident that you could just run and like
Hail Mary.
American football style kick. We played foot golf not too long ago. Imagine that.
Yeah,
it'd be great. Number 4, one of the rules is no guests, and Brahms starts acting even stranger. I think he means when Greta has some guests.
Yeah.
For example, taking clothes, crying, etc. So follow the rules as above.
Yeah.
So basically, as I said, she follows the rules to some extent, but I think the one that she constantly breaks is having guests, because she has both Malcolm and Cole over.
Yes, I mean, if she was to be scientific about it, she'd say these rules exist for a reason. And as soon as you start seeing evidence of things going badly when you break the rules, probably don't break the rules.
That's evidence to suggest that you shouldn't break the rules.
Yeah.
So he says that he didn't have time to rewatch the film, which is a crying shame for him.
Unlucky.
But he says he hopes we enjoyed it and keep up the good work.
Yeah, enjoyed is a weird word to use for this film.
Yeah, endured.
Yeah.
Similar words. But thanks very much, Matt Peck, for emailing in.
Yeah.
And that email address is howtosurviveshow@gmail.com if you want to suggest a film for us to cover.
Unless you're Matt Peck.
Yes, he's had his turn.
Yeah. Next week, Chris, what have we got?
We've got another listener recommendation.
And going back a few months, way back to September this year, we had an email in from Simon Todd. And he said, "Dear Chris and Joe, I have a slightly off-piece proposal for How to Survive. How about The Untouchables? De Niro is a blast, and lots of chaps die. Good cast. So we're going to be covering The Untouchables next week.
Yeah, the Brian De Palma 1987 classic
Mm-hmm.
About a group of men who do not like being touched.
No, they can't be touched.
They can't be touched.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
And how will they survive?
Yeah, it's the story of the taking down of Al Capone.
Spoilers.
That's what the premise of the film. They're trying to take down Al Capone.
Yeah, well, you made it sound like they'd succeed.
It happened in real life 80 years ago.
Mate, spoilers.
Spoilers for real life.
Spoilers, please. The Untouchables next week.
Yeah.
Brian De Palma classic.
Yeah.
With Sean Connery in his Academy Award winning role.
Did he win an Oscar for this?
Yeah.
Fuck off. Really?
Yeah, he did.
Jesus Christ.
Great.
I should win one for...
Look forward to Joe's thoughts on The Untouchables next week. And that email address, once again, is howtosurviveshow@gmail.com.
Yeah.
You can also get in touch on Facebook, facebook.com/howtosurvivepod, or Twitter @howtosurvivepod. Don't forget to go to our website, www.howtosurviveshow.com, to watch our Saw marathon video. It's still available. And
we spent like 15 hours making that in one go without breaks.
Yeah.
So if you don't go and watch it, what are you really?
Yeah.
How do you live with yourself?
Yeah.
And remember as well, 5-star reviews, please.
Yes. Yeah.
iTunes.
We don't ask for much, do we?
No. I mean, it's free content. All we ask is a 5-star review as payment, and that's free.
Yeah.
You are free content for your free content. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like it, if you haven't liked the show and you're at this point, something's wrong with you. So you may as well just leave us a 5-star review anyway. Yeah.
So until next week, with The Untouchables, you looking forward to it, Joe?
Yeah, I am. More so than I've looked forward to a lot of movies lately.
Attaboy.